the backlog. Whether it's books, movies, TV shows, or games, we all have some sort of entertainment that we want to get through. Books, movies, and TV shows all have a definitive end, or at least a runtime. Games, on the other hand, can vary with their runtime, from a couple of hours to a couple of days. When staring at your backlog of games, whether physical or digital, it can be hard to know where to even start. Do you start with the old, or do you just stick with the new? If you don't have the console set up already, that's a whole other thing that you have to do before playing. And by the time you get everything set up and ready to go, you'd probably rather play another game or just do something else. If you're like me, this is the device that you're gonna want to get. The Steam Deck. I originally got one to play modded Risk of Rain 2, custom Black Ops 3 Zombies maps, and Sonic Generations on the go. I used it like this for quite some time, but I remember hearing about how good the Steam Deck was for emulation, so I decided to get a micro SD card and load it up with games. This thing is fantastic for emulation. I can play pretty much anything. Even Switch games run pretty good on it. A newer model was recently released called the Steam Deck OLED. It's a bit lighter, has a larger battery, and has an OLED screen. There's a lot of people that upgraded and are trying to get rid of their old Steam Decks, so you can get an older model for super cheap. If you don't want to get a secondhand Steam Deck, you can get the cheapest model directly from Valve as the same price as the Switch OLED. If you only want a Steam Deck for emulation and getting through your backlog of older games, you don't even need to pick up a model with high storage, as all the games are stored on the micro SD card. The only system that the Steam Deck struggles with are the PS3, original Xbox, Xbox 360, and Switch. This primarily has to do with emulators still being worked on and updated, in addition to the Steam Deck not being as powerful as your typical gaming computer. Depending on the game, it may run fine, might have slowdown, or not even launch at all. Now, what if you don't want to spend a bunch of money and just want to use your consoles that you have around you? Well, you're in luck. I'm going to give you 5 options of consoles to help tackle your backlog. If you want something portable, you're going to want a PS Vita or a 3DS. If you want a home console, you're going to want an Xbox Series S or X, PlayStation 3, or Wii U. What you decide to play on will depend on what games you have in your backlog, as not every platform will be supported across all consoles. Most of these you'll have to mod, but I'll go over each console's capabilities unmodded too. I won't be going into detail on how to mod these systems, but I'll include some links in the description to some websites and videos to help guide you in the right direction. Typically, you don't want to follow a video guide, as processes for modding systems can change rapidly, but these should still help you nonetheless. All these mods are software mods, so no need to disassemble your console or solder in a mod chip. In addition, you'll need to back up your games. I don't condone piracy, but some companies, Nintendo, don't leave me with many choices. First up is the PlayStation Vita. Without modification, you can play PS Vita games, PSP, and PS1 games. There are some PS2 and PS3 games like God of War Collection, Jak and Daxter Collection, and Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, but they can have some performance issues from time to time. With a modded PS Vita, you can play Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, NES, SNES, Game Gear, Genesis, N64, and Dreamcast games. N64 and Dreamcast games are hit and miss. Some games will run great, while others will have major performance issues. Your other option for a portable system is the 3DS. Without modification, you can play 3DS, DS, NES, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Gear games. If you have a new 3DS console, these are the ones that have the extra shoulder buttons and the C-stick nub. You can also play SNES games. If you bought your 3DS before the price drop back in August of 2011, you'll most likely have the Ambassador games, which include GBA games which are exclusive to the Ambassador program. Now, compared to the PS Vita, where you can still purchase games digitally, the eShop is pretty much shut down. It's still up to re-download previously purchased games, but you can't purchase any new games. So unless you purchase the games you want to play before the shop shut down, you'll need to mod your 3DS. With the modded 3DS, you can play GBA, SNES, and Genesis games. Despite previously mentioning that only new 3DSs can play SNES games, any 3DS can play SNES games when modded. On the console side, we'll start off with the Xbox Series S and X. Without modification, you can play Xbox Series S and X, Xbox One, Xbox 360, and original Xbox games. Now, compared to other consoles, there hasn't been much development for the hacking or modding scene for the Series S and X. Since Microsoft makes it super easy to add emulators or homebrew to their consoles through developer mode. You'll need to pay a one-time $20 activation fee, but after that, you'll be able to emulate a wide variety of games. Keep in mind that you'll need to switch from retail mode and dev mode depending on what you want to play. All of your Xbox games will be in retail mode, while all of your emulated games will be in dev mode. The Series S and X can play DS, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, NES, SNES, N64, Genesis, Saturn, Dreamcast, PlayStation 1, GameCube, Wii, PSP, PS2, and Xbox 360 games. That is a lot of stuff you can play on one console. The Xbox 360 emulator in dev mode is primarily for games that aren't on the backwards compatibility list, and considering how cheap an Xbox Series S can go for now, it's probably one of the best bang for your buck consoles that you can get for emulation. Moving on to our next console, the Wii U. Without modification, you can play Wii U, Wii, NES, SNES, N64, Game Boy Advance, DS, and TurboGrafx-16. Just like the 3DS, the eShop has been shut down, so you'll need to modify your system to emulate older games that you haven't purchased. Once modified, you can play GameCube, Genesis, Game Boy, and Game Boy Color games. The final console is the PlayStation 3. All PS3 systems can play PS3 and PS1 games. Certain models of the PS3 can play PS2 games as well, although these systems are a bit more expensive compared to non-backwards compatible models. It's going to be some of the older fat models of the PS3. You'll know if you have a backwards compatible PS3 if you have the 4 USB ports on the front and the media card flap. Once modified, you can play Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, NES, SNES, Genesis, PSP, and PS2 games on any console, not just native backwards compatible ones. Alright, so you've chosen your console or consoles to help get through your backlog. Now for the backlog itself. You can do this in any way that you want, but this is how I've been doing it for the past year, and it's worked pretty well for me. Look through your backlog and note down the games that you actually want to play. Any games that don't interest you, or random games that you got in a Humble Bundle or other promotions that you didn't really want, feel free to take those games off your backlog. I like to organize my games by platform in a Google Sheet, but you can organize it however you'd like. I then went on to how long to beat and noted down how long each game will take to get through. I added all these times in my spreadsheet, then added them all up for each platform. I also added a tab on the games I played throughout the year with a column for the platform, whether I beat the game or not, and comments or reasons why I skipped or dropped the game. It's not needed to help get through your backlog, but it's fun to take a look back at all the games you played throughout the year. Sweet, everything's organized, and now you have to do the hard part, actually picking and playing through your games. If you're looking through your list and having a hard time choosing, don't worry, that's what the Wheel of Destiny is for. Just throw it all into a wheel and let it decide for you. I typically let the wheel decide the platform first, then the games from said platform. It does a pretty good job with variety, so that the games that I play aren't too similar back to back. If you're not feeling a particular game, just spin the wheel again. When going through your backlog, you're going to want to change games and platforms every once in a while. You don't want to play 3 RPGs back to back and be completely burnt out on RPGs. If a game you're playing isn't really clicking for you, or you aren't enjoying it, just drop it. Why waste your time on something that you're not really enjoying? At the very least, you could say you tried it and it just wasn't for you. You're also going to want to limit your live service type games. These are games that are constantly updating and don't really have a definitive end. I would say limit it to 1 or 2 live service games. Using all these tricks and having a device like the Steam Deck where I can play a majority of my games on one device has helped clear out my backlog immensely. Just this past year, I was able to get through 33 of my games on my backlog. I got introduced to games that I would have never played, like Time Splitters, Donkey Kong Country, and Metroid. I'm hoping that the consoles and strategies that I've shown you will help get through your backlog, because, well, I'm gonna be doing this for a long time. Hey, thank you for watching the video. Links to my socials will be in the description. See you all in the next one.